This is the main avenue that runs along the Kremlin and Red Square in Moscow. And as I'm riding this rented bike around, I'm looking at the buildings, the people, but I'm also looking at the cars because I'm a big car fan, and I find it interesting to see what kind of cars people drive in different countries and get an idea about people from the kind of cars they drive. So look at these two S-Class Mercedes across the street there. Those are $90,000 cars to start. So Moscow, obviously, there's a lot of rich people here, and so it's similar to New York in that, yeah, a big city like this, there's going to be some rich people, and so they're definitely going to have a lot more higher end cars than they would in some outskirts cities where people are a lot poorer. Same thing goes in the US. You know, you're not going to see the kind of cars you see in New York City in some poor town in upstate New York or something like that. But let's have a look at the kind of cars we see out here. So across the street you see is the Kremlin, and next to that is the State Museum, State National Museum, which behind that is Red Square. So this is really ground zero to everything in Moscow. And coming up on the side of the street that I'm on is the Duma building, which is the lower house of the kind of the parliament. It's the lower house of the government in Russia, and in front of it is a parking lot of the deputies from the Duma. So it's the lower house of the Federal Assembly of Russia. And we'll see what kind of cars they have there. It's pretty surprising when I rode by this thing. But in the meantime, here's in front of a hotel, you see back-to-back Maybach Mercedes, which are $170,000 each. And behind that, this Jeep, which you think is probably not that expensive, costs almost as much as the Maybachs because it's a G63 AMG Mercedes G-Wagon, which starts at about $147,000. So with options, it could get as expensive as the Maybachs that were in front of it. So just those three cars are $500,000 right there. So right across from me is the Duma building, which I'm going to cross over to after I go to the underground passage, and straight ahead is the State Museum, and behind that is Red Square. So let's pop over to the parking lot in front of the Duma building and have a look at the cars there. So here's the parking lot right on the avenue. First thing you see is a Range Rover, a Ford Mondeo right here, but then you start seeing all the BMW 5 Series, 1, 2, 3, 4, Mercedes GL SUV, another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Series, another one, just endless amounts, another Mercedes SUV, 2 of them. So see how many you can count. I went back and counted all the ones that are right here in front of me, as well as the ones that are in the opposite row along the street there, trying to figure out all the ones I can make out. But I've never seen so many BMWs in my life that wasn't in a BMW dealership. And even here at the end, you see these 750 Li BMWs. Those are the long wheelbase, and they have the little blue police light on them. So the deputies can, you know, rush through traffic and get around traffic if they need to get somewhere quickly. So did you get a good look at all those cars in there? I mean, it looked like the parking lot to a really fancy hotel or a really fancy restaurant or nightclub or something like that. Here is a summary of just the BMWs and Mercedes from that parking lot. So I counted 31 5 Series BMWs. They average about $53,000 to start in the US. So that's a total of 1.6 million worth. There's also 10 7 Series BMWs, and those start at around 86,000. They can go up to over 100,000. That's about $860,000 worth. Now, mind you, these are for brand new cars. Obviously, not all of them were brand new. Some of them might have been some years old or whatever. I'm just saying that current year, these are the prices of what they cost on average to start. The Mercedes, there were 12 S-Class Mercedes, and those start at 91,000 each, so that's about $1.1 million worth. There are also 2 Maybachs in this parking lot. Those start at $170,000 each, so that's $340,000 for the 2 of them. There were 2 GLS SUVs. They start at around $70,000. That's $140,000. There was 1 ML Mercedes SUV. That's about $56,000 to start, and 1 E-Class Mercedes, which is about $53,000 to start. Funny thing is, you don't see any of the lower end stuff, like even only the E-Class. There was only 1 of them. You don't see any C-Class Mercedes or 3 Series BMWs. And I didn't even count, so this total is about $3.8 million worth of cars, if they were brand new prices. And I didn't even count the 5 Range Rovers or Rovers that I saw there. And those are about 68, 70,000 each. So that's like another 350,000. So it's pretty valuable parking lot. And I don't know what the story is with those. I don't know why there's so many 5 Series. Is it because that's kind of a government car that they give you if you're a deputy? You know, it's kind of a leased car from the government. Or maybe you get a government allowance and, you know, there's good deal on BMW leases or something like that. I'm not really sure. I'm not trying to say that, you know, because these deputies all have these high-end cars that they're corrupt or whatever like that. And I'm not saying they're not. I'm sure some are, some aren't, just like in the U.S. And as for the U.S., you wouldn't really see this in the U.S., and not because people in the U.S. government don't have money or aren't corrupt or whatever. It's just that it's not really politically correct to be driving high-end foreign cars when we have such a big U.S. auto industry. So what most politicians do in the U.S. is they drive these big SUVs that look kind of plain, but they're really expensive, more expensive than some of these cars in this parking lot. Like, for instance, the Suburbans, which is a big Chevy SUV, are between like 50 and 65,000. The Yukon starts at 50,000, and the Cadillac Escalade starts at like 75,000. And so you'll see these politicians driving a lot of them, and a lot of them are government cars. So the prices are the same, the looks are different. I would prefer the BMWs myself. But anyway, so that's a look at these cars here. And one other thing is, if you notice, there's a good amount of Ford Mondios in that parking lot, and that's a European version Ford makes in Europe. And it's a little surprising because I see a lot of these government cars in Russia are Ford Mondios, even police cars, which is kind of surprising in itself. You know, you would think that they wouldn't be buying American cars if we're, you know, their enemy or whatever. But obviously Germany was once their enemy also, so who knows. But one thing I notice about Russian cars is, 1, they like them really big. 2, they also like the high-end models. So it's not just a Mercedes S-Class, it has to be a Mercedes AMG, which costs more and is high-powered and all of that stuff. But they like the cars big. You don't see a lot of convertibles because of the weather, and also you don't see a lot of sports cars. There's not a lot of small Porsches or Ferraris or that kind of thing. You may see some Porsche Panameras, the four-door Porsche, something like that. But Russians seem to like bigger cars for sure. I'll tell you, I was really surprised when I came to Moscow to see the amount of really high-end cars. I mean, I thought that they would have some, but I thought most of it would be kind of older cars. Based on what you see in the media in the U.S., always trying to say that Russia's behind or whatever. But I'll tell you, I saw a lot of really nice cars. I never seen so many Mercedes CLS in my life. I never seen so many Mercedes E-Class coupes in my life as I did in Moscow. And I was only there for a few weeks. And I saw one car that I've never seen in my life and didn't even know existed. And that's the Mercedes CLS station wagon, which they call the Shooting Brake. I didn't even know that thing existed. When I saw it, I was trying to figure out what it was. I thought it was maybe an E-Class station wagon or something like that. So, you'd be surprised what you find when you go someplace. Don't just assume you know how it is before you actually go there and have a look around for yourself. So that's how I got to go, is to know, because you don't really know until you actually go someplace yourself and see for yourself. And for you car fans in the US, leave a comment below and let me know if you've ever seen a Mercedes CLS Shooting Brake in person before. Also, like and subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out with the YouTube algorithms to get my videos shown to a wider audience. Thank you for watching.